Hi folks, I'd like to introduce you to Mobilize. It's a conference being produced by GigaOM. It's going to bring together the thought leaders and practitioners of the mobile web ecosystems for discussions, demonstrations, and debate. It's September 30th, 2010 at the Mission Bay Conference Center in San Francisco. Untether.tv is a media sponsor, and if you register using the code UNTETHERTV, you'll save $100 off the cover price. Highly recommend you go. Highly recommend you participate, and then give me some feedback when you've returned. To register, go to www.mobilizeconf.com. mobilizeconf.com. I'd like to introduce you to the Location-Based Marketing Summit, September 29th to 30th, 2010 in New York City. It's a place where you can have all your questions answered around what's working today in this growing space. They've got a great lineup, guys like Adam Ostro, guys like Sam Taggart from VaynerMedia, guys like Worley from Chaotic Moon, and yours truly will be participating in this. So come on out, September 29th to 30th in New York. Visit www.locationmarketingsummit.com to register. Hope to see you there. This episode is brought to you by Mobility Public Relations, the full-service PR agency created specifically for mobility technology companies just like yours.
This is Untether.tv, where we get inside the business of mobile. Here's your host, Rob Woodbridge.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Untether.tv, where we get inside the business of mobile. I'm joined all the way from Silicon Valley, or Mountain View, California. I'm talking to Scott Schwarzhoff, who's the VP of Marketing for Appcelerator. Scott, thanks for coming on and telling us your story here to the Untether crowd.
Thank you very much here, Rob. Looking forward to it.
So everybody, I'm just going to set the scene here because, I've talked to a lot, close to 100 entrepreneurs at this point who are building applications in the mobile space and trying to figure out what the most efficient way is and the best way to sell a product at 99 cents or $1.99 and make some money off of it. So, and that's one side of it. The flip side is that there's also this treasure trove in multiple applications or multiple platforms. So if you build on the iPhone, you want to build on the BlackBerry, you want to build on Windows Mobile, you want to build on the iPad, and then maybe even get to the desktop. Right. Big issues there, obviously, in building for all those platforms. You're a small company. You can't really do that very effectively with a couple of developers because you might not have the skill to be able to port it over into multiple languages. Mm-hmm. Enter Appcelerator and Titanium, right?
That's right.
Did I do it justice?
We're it.
Okay, that's it. Thanks. Good.
We're done. That's it. We're done for our own thing. Okay.
The shortest interview I've ever done. No, I won't let you off that. So that's where Appcelerator comes in. That's right. That's a sweet spot, is that you've identified the problem, which is multiple platforms, and you've come up with an open source solution. So let's talk about Appcelerator and Titanium. What is it?
Sure.
How long have you guys been around? And why do you guys matter?
Sure, absolutely. So we around now 2.5, 3 years now. We have a range of products, but fundamentally we're all focused on the biggest group of out there, and that's web developers. Web developers last 15 years have been fantastic for growth and innovation, and all of that innovation really has come from web developers. So we take web developers and we turn them into native mobile and desktop application developers. Now our philosophy is really all around making the most of each of the platforms that we support. So as I talk through over the next half hour, we're going to talk through some of those capabilities that are really unique with each of those platforms that you just mentioned there, Rob. And I think that out of all of this, that if you're listening to this, I think it's really kind of understanding where my business is and what its specific needs are in terms of web connectivity and the device support and the exposure and the distribution, all these facets, and then mapping that up with the platforms that you need to be on. Right. We're in the middle. Certainly, we're there to sort of help you on whichever platform, but we'll sort of walk through some of those trade-offs and some of the things that you should really kind of watch out for. So.
And you guys have been around since 2006, but is the mobile side new, or has that always been a part of the vision?
Right. So the mobile space is for us is we've been out now for about 13, 14 months. So June of last year we had big shindig at WWDC and opened up our mobile product. But actually, that was we actually started off in the rich internet application space. Gosh, about I guess 3-4 years ago, and moved into a desktop product. You could think of it as basically cross-platform PC, Mac, and Linux application development for desktop applications. And then we moved into mobile. You might call that the no-brainer product line extension, if you will, back then in June. So we've been doing this for about 14 months on mobile. Mm-hmm.
And it's been accelerating, obviously, for your mobile support, because I mean you've got the big guys like Apple for the iPhone. You got iPad support as well.
That's right.
I saw that you're close to a BlackBerry release, or you're doing beta testing on the BlackBerry release.
That's right. Yeah, so we're in beta right now on BlackBerry. iPad, Android. We started off with iPhone and Android, and then we've added BlackBerry and iPad since that time. So.
Okay, and you mind talk about your customer base for a second here before we really dive into the product? But is it this is an open source project?
That's right. That's right. So, well, it's a couple of things, right? So, at its core, we're a pure open source company. So, it's all for us, it's all about web developers, open source web developers using our technology, which is all licensed under the Apache 2 license. So, when you can do whatever you want with Titanium, and we give you the full range of capabilities with that platform, and that's a pretty important tenet for us. All the way from our founders down through our end users. Everyone's using open source technologies. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what was the in 2006? We started off with looking at desktop applications or cross-platform desktop applications. What walk through that evolution? Was I know the company's been funded, obviously. And was it started bootstrapped and funded, or was it funded expressly for the development of this? Because I know your founder actually came from it was Idea Lab, right?
Actually, he's been in a number of startups. So we have eHatchery, and actually, and Jeff's been at numerous startups before this, running the ship here. It was actually in Atlanta, so our business actually started in Atlanta. And then we actually moved here, about 2 years ago now, and that's actually when we got funded. So up until then, it was self-funding, and then we got our A round through Storm Ventures, and actually Larry Augustin, who's a big luminary in the open source space, VA, Linux, and that sort of thing. And so, and we launched right after we got funding. We launched our desktop product, and so it's kind of moved from the web, if you will, to desktop to mobile. So we're sort of tracking what a lot of organizations out there doing.
Yeah, and so when you guys got the funding and then you moved into the mobile space, was there a transition? Was there how ready were you for the mobile space? Maybe is a better question.
Right. So it was interesting. I think that we came off of we use. In terms of standards, we're big proponents of HTML5. Yeah. We use WebKit, a lot of our technology. We actually initially approached mobile in the same way that we approached desktop, a WebKit-based type of product, and that worked well through I guess March of this year. But then actually we've actually taken Appcelerator now. In mobile is actually a different product than when we actually launched about 14 months ago. We've actually taken what we consider to be a quote-unquote all-native approach, which basically means that we've developed a binding layer, essentially, that will bind a native control to a JavaScript API, including things around user interface components, and maps and all these native widgets essentially that you can use to throw together to create a really interesting native mobile application.
And is there anything? Are there any limitations other than imagination for what you can create with the product?
Well, so technically there are no limitations because, and we'll get into this, we've got a whole extension to our platform. We call it, we're rolling out a new service. It's going to be called Titanium Plus. Yeah. But basically it's going to be this ability to stack on top of Titanium, which basically covers the core SDKs stack on top any other module you'd like. So technically, no, there's no limitation. Practically speaking, I think that we do have some games, but we don't have a lot of 3D games. So I think gaming may be one area that products like Unity 3D are fantastic. Shiva, Torque, there are other gaming engines out there for Android and iPhone. But our piece is on and actually we do have some top games, so that that's kind of runs counter to that. So we won't gamut, but we do sort of focus on business applications, productivity, utility, a lot of applications that are used for very specific purchases. I'm running a conference in 3 weeks. I need to put together an app. And then we also have applications for large brands and agencies and so forth. So quite the spread of applications.
So it says on the website that you have some 60,000 plus downloads, and that number every time I go to the website obviously goes up and up and up and up and up and up. What does that mean in terms of an active user base? Do you know
Sure.
what
Right.
do you know how many apps are being pushed out?
Yes, we do. So we actually have an analytics product. It's actually built into every one of our applications. We're all about measurement. At the end of the day, the only way you're going to really know what to do with your product is if you know what's going on in that product. And the only way you're going to do that is with analytics. And so we actually bundle in analytics into every single one of our applications. So I can tell you exactly how many applications we have. We have, as of this morning, we have 3,291 applications in the App Store. That is growing about at a clip of about 1,000 per month. Is our current traction. Those 62,000 developers, so those actually aren't downloads. We've had probably 5-10x the number of downloads or whatever. Those are actually registered developers. So you've actually come in, you signed up, and again, that allows us to maintain communication with that entire developer base.
So that's so you got 3,200 or almost 3,300 apps out. And do any stand out for you that are very unique that you think, wow, we built that?
Yeah. The really fun part about this job is every day right now we're getting about 40 apps in the App Store, right? Yeah. 30 to 40 apps, right? That's how we get to the 1,000 a month. And so one of those or two of those typically are like, wow, okay, that's really cool. Like we had this one. It was I'll start with sort of like the fun ones and then kind of get into others. But we had one about 2 weeks ago where this guy sent us a video and he had his iPad. You can Google this thing. It was on CNN and a bunch of other things. This guy had this iPad and he was using it as a remote control for his blimp that he had set up with a video camera. Yeah, he set up like this video camera in the blimp that was streaming video back through a socket connection into a titanium app on the iPad, and the iPad's accelerometer was used to control the blimp. Now that's on one end of the, okay, that's cool, that's fun. On the other hand, of those apps, I mean, we have now, we've done eBay's main corporate app. We have apps in the App Store from MTV. We have one app out there from NBC, and actually 3 more NBC apps in development. We have an app from Budweiser. So that's kind of on the brand side and the enterprise side. On the in terms of other apps, I mean, we've got a lot of apps that are actually hitting #1 or making news. My newspaper app is a top 25 iPad app. Terminology is another good one. It's the #1 reference app out there. We've got a really fun game. It's like a 2-player kind of chess-like game. It's like chess on steroids. It's called Swarm SG. It's a top 100 game. And then actually most recently GetGlue. GetGlue is a social check-in application. Yeah. So those are really I would say all of those apps have kind of come up over the last 2 to 3 months. It's really been this just growth spurt. Once we made this sort of changeover into an all-native platform, the growth in productivity has just kind of gone through the roof. It's a lot of fun.
So do you get a sense of how accelerated the app development process is working with your platform?
Yes. So to kind of maybe kind of step you through like the typical type of scenario that we see for a developer, because everyone comes to us and it's like, I got to get into mobile, and what do I do, right? Like, what's my first step, right? And everyone comes to us and And the first thing, of course, because they're web developers, right? Which we love. Everyone's coming from that. I need to connect to some cloud service in the sky or something. I've got a business that's running online, and I want to take that business and extend to the application.
Now that's where you're finding the majority of the developers are coming from. That mindset?
Because that's their history, which is I think kind of an if you think of like what is a mobile developer, it's a term that means a whole bunch of different people from different backgrounds. A lot of mobile developers today were actually Mac developers before, right? Yeah. Because the iPhone's most popular now, and iPhone developers are Mac OS X developers, et cetera, et cetera. So they come to it from a particular point of view of what can this platform do? What are the capabilities, right? Our developers, because they're web developers coming over to mobile, come from a connected point of view. Yeah. It's all about starting with, I've got my API, I've got my web app, I've got this, this mashup I want to do, this Facebook app I want to port, whatever that is. That's their perspective on where they're coming from into the ecosystem that we have.
So that's an interesting change because, maybe it's not. It's an interesting perspective to come at. So, I mean, you put a lot of logic and a lot of thought into what it is that you're serving online. Any kind of web service or any kind of web app. So you really have parameters that you want to adhere to. You want to bring what you can into the mobile space. You don't want to do it on the mobile web. You want to build a native app. So you come in saying, I need these 5 functions. Does Appcelerator do that, or does Titanium do that? Right? That's their perspective?
Typically so, right? Yeah, okay. We do get the hey, do you do this? Do you do that? Do you do that? What we typically say is, look, let's just start off defining the end user experience.
Okay.
Like, can you help me walk through that, right? And like for I'm trying to think of a good example of this. Probably for like NBC, we help them through in terms of okay, Jay Leno, let's really kind of dive into his garage and really kind of connect with his audience. I can tell you that the application that's actually coming up, which is for another late night show, it's interesting. They started off on one that kind of pulls media and videos and and images and so forth for the Jay Leno application. Yep. The next application is actually going to be one with participation actually in the late night show. So you're actually using your mobile device to take pictures of yourselves in funny poses or doing zany things, and that becomes a piece of the late night show. And so it's this notion that when you think of not only coming to the mobile because you have to be there for distribution, but then you think of the fact that mobile opens up a way to augment your actual offering and what you provide. Then that gets into a really interesting type of experience. And oh, by the way, that experience typically can only be done inside of an application.
Right.
And that's where we really get to a good relationship with our developers, as we say, now you understand what it means to go native. And that's and because you understand that it's not just a port of what you're trying to do. Right.
And that's exactly. I've had these conversations just simply about the difference between mobile web.
Right.
And almost circumventing the internet by using a native application that connects directly to a database just over your wireless carrier, your connected device. So we interrupted the flow, right? So they come to you with as a web developer, they've already created their application online. They want to bring that into a mobile environment. Then what's the next step after that?
Right. So after we've sort of fleshed out like that really compelling use case, right? Where typically what we're trying to do is we're really pushing on 2 things, right? Number one, where are you coming from and that web connected experience, the thing you're trying to pull from. Number 2, how does that experience get augmented by the device, right? By the devices you're going to, like what sort of opportunities, and a lot of times it's a really creative, like brainstorming type of session, right? How does location change what you're offering, right? How does media and camera and that sort of, how does that change that experience or improve upon it, right? So we run through like this checklist of questions and basically say, if you were to have this, like what does that mean? And then of course, how important is that to you? Because ultimately we don't want to push a feature on someone that isn't going to be needed. But on the other hand, because you're coming from the web, we don't want, we don't want it to just be, a web page as an app. That would do no one any good. You might as well do a mobile website for that. So that's sort of that give and take type of relationship. That's kind of, the next step. After that, then what we get into is typically like a, okay, let's get into a cycle where we get into rapid innovation, as we like to say. So meaning that let's look at development cycles that can be 2 weeks to 4 weeks in length, really fast. Get something down, get a great design, great user experience down. Make sure you nail that first, and get in the core pieces, right? Maybe it's getting to this web service. Maybe it's augmenting with the camera. Maybe it's pulling in some location. Maybe it's adding a module to the application because you need to do barcode scanning or credit card swiping or whatever that thing is, right? So let's get the basics down, and then let's innovate on that really, really quickly. And our successful developers are the ones that have these short development windows, and then they get that feedback, and then they get into this process. And that's generally the type of relationship that we get into with developers.
And is it is it typical that it takes 4 to 12 weeks, 8 to 12 weeks to get an app out when you have an idea of what it is that you're looking for? I'm not talking about looking at a blank piece of paper saying, okay, what do I want to build? But you come in there with the ideas. You know what you need. Is that fair to assess that length?
Yeah. So a couple things on that. Generally speaking, we can get apps out inside of 4 weeks if you with a good spec, right? So, but I think there are a couple notable pieces to that. Number one, the hang-up typically is on the back end, right? Do you have the services in place already to support this, right? For example, streaming video, right? So streaming video we can support easily inside a client interface, but you may not have contacted Akamai to set up your streaming server and get all your video in an HTML5 format that then can be streamed, et cetera, right? That's a back-end service that needs to be put in place before you can do a client side. So so those sort of factors notwithstanding, you can typically do most of the applications inside 4 weeks. What we actually see is, now we've talked about the first app, right, which is critical, right? That first app, making that developer the hero, making either the indie developer successful or the developer in the organization the hero in his organization. That's job number one for us. Yeah. Job number two there is on the productivity piece. So after you do that first app, what we've seen is that your next one becomes about twice as fast in terms of your execution time. Right. And then you actually, it's like plutonium or something, right? It's like got like this half-life type of thing on your app development. And in the end, now we've got developers who are like, I've got 8 apps in development, and that's not uncommon. And they've just got all these ideas, and they're like, well, I'm pulling geo here. I've got a camera thing here. I've got this API here, and they're just pulling in these widgets, and they're just having a lot of fun with it. So.
Yeah, like that, you've hit on a really interesting point there. Is that when you reduce the cost and that barrier of cost of application development, because I've heard some pretty astronomical numbers for a load of crap, right? That people are, recreating a website for 40 grand in an app, and I always ask the question, well, why? Why in God's name would you even consider just creating an app with your website on? So, you've been through that, and the varying degrees of cost in application development. So if you go to a developer and you want an iPhone app, it's going to cost you $20,000, right? It just seems to be where the web was 10 years ago. But you bring up a really interesting point. You leverage existing knowledge, obviously HTML, JavaScript, CSS, and everything around web development. You're democratizing the development of these applications. You're bringing it closer to the people who actually have the skills. You don't need to go out and hire somebody with C# or Java experience. And that's when the ideas start to free flow almost, because you removed the barrier of cost, and now people inside of organizations look around and say, what else can we do here? Like, we've been caught in a bubble. We thought it was so expensive to get into app development. It's not. And now, look at all these things that we can do to help our employees use these tools. Is that what you're finding?
Absolutely. It is entirely what we're finding. And the developers themselves are like kids in a candy store, because they're like, oh my God, I got all these things I can do, right? And all of a sudden, we really do focus on the developer is the hero in the organization. I mean, it's taking that web development organization and saying, you know what, you don't need to outsource this thing. We do this. We run into this situation a lot with advertising agencies, right? Ad agencies now are under these like incredible stresses where, doing the web and doing the Facebook, doing the web page, the website, and the Facebook page is like table stakes for the campaign, right? The bar is, that's your minimum, right? Now what else can you bring to us? And the next piece is, well, mobile, and then mobile is usually met with like, oh, mobile. Oh, like and then you get into these whole mental cycles of, well, should we outsource that? And then the problem with that, of course, is that you not only get into potentially a more costly scenario and a scenario that will take more time. The real big thing that happens is that these agencies keep coming back to is a loss of control,
right.
A loss of fundamental control of a key part of their strategy. And agencies aren't the only ones. Once you outsource, you lose all retained knowledge of that project. Especially now you go to iterate to the next important thing, right? It's not in your control. So now once you bring that in, and now you say, you know what, it's one team, it's your web team. They're doing everything. And then they can start thinking through, and they can start saying, this is what we're going to do on the web, and this is how that experience gets better on device. And they can make those trade-offs amongst themselves with the full ownership and power to execute. And now they're really cooking with gas. So I can tell you, for example, I use the NBC example a lot because it is one where it's the NBC.com team that's driving a lot of this. They are the organization that's driving this innovation on their web properties, NBC.com, and now their mobile sites, right, and their mobile properties. And they've got this integrated type of development setup. So that's really interesting. GetGlue is another great example. It's a hot app. It's taking advantage of this whole check-in craze like Foursquare is, but it's applying it to entertainment. You check in, I'm watching Justin Bieber or whatever, right? So, but there again, it's the same sort of thing. They've got a web team. They've had this website for a while. But now they are doing the application. The application's personal, allows me to more easily check in. It's available with me. It's got one-click Facebook Connect access, all these sort of native capabilities, and now they're just cooking. So here's the next thing. So now you get your app done. Now you get productive on that. Now your choice, especially by using a platform like ours or another, is do I do that next project, right? Do I do the next thing that's coming to me? Or do I go cross-platform, maybe make a couple changes on that kind of, and so that's so we get into those types of things, which are really kind of interesting as well. So a lot of branching logic and trees that you start walking down.
But what you've done is you've taken out that consideration about do we do it or not, right? You've eliminated that. So it's a different level of conversation that you're having, which is, do we build that next app, or that next engagement, or next way to engage with our customers,
right?
A unique app, or do we build across the platform so that we touch more of our existing customer base on the platforms that they're on?
That's right.
You brought up an interesting thing, and when you said that the NBC team or NBC.com team is building the mobile application, and I've run a couple of companies before. One in the consumer space, building mobile games. The other one in the enterprise IT space, building a tool that allowed you to administer your IT environment right from your BlackBerry or your iPhone. Mm-hmm. Two very different approaches two different selling approaches. Consumer versus enterprise. And a lot of what we were doing on the enterprise side was driven by the IT departments, right? So they were leading our development cycles. But doesn't it make sense if you're in customer engagement at the web layer, like the NBC.com team? Isn't it logical for them to own the natural extension, which is mobile engagement as well? And do you see that? Do you see that more or less out there? Like, is it IT that's owning the mobile space, or is it the web team?
Yeah, I think it's like IT's got to provide like the guardrails and I think that IT. What's interesting now is I think that things are becoming more favorable for the IT departments. You look at things like iOS 4. Now you can do over-the-air distribution, which is great. So we actually see, we were at one client the other day, they have an entire enterprise app store. It looks like iTunes, but for their own internal apps. And it's like, wow, you're building your own app store. And they're like, yeah, we got to get, now that we have all this capability, now it's a matter of how do I get this out to thousands of employees? And Apple's making it easier, Google's making it easier, RIM's been setting up some stuff. So the IT types of pieces are getting easier. Now that said, of course, the thing about it is that mobile is at once a personal and a business device all in one. And so it's the same device that I go in and I'm accessing my Salesforce or my Sugar CRM data in the day, and then I'm turning it over and they're playing Angry Birds at night with my kids, and it's the same device. So IT's got that challenge of, oh my God, how do I make sure that it's locked down enough so that sensitive data, it doesn't walk away. But on the other hand, it's a personal device that, quite frankly, in many cases, is paid for by the actual employee, and so it's this give and take type of thing. But I definitely see, getting back to your point, that the application development teams they're just running with it because there's a sense of urgency that this is all happening now, and that the gloves are off, and we don't have to get approval from any handset maker, any carrier to put our application. And now we have the platforms and the tools available to actually do our job. Let's get cracking, because we've got a lot of things we want, that we've had on the back burner that now we want to get front and center in these app stores.
It's pretty amazing, right? So when you talk, I mean, you're straddling both. I mean, you have independent developers that are using your product. You have enterprises that are using your product. Some are doing it for free. Some are paying you guys a monthly fee. So you get a great vantage point to see how it's being used in different circumstances, and it's from an enterprise side, so deep inside of a company. You democratize, you enable, you reduce the cost for them to build these applications. Therefore, you kind of get more and more applications rolled out. What about the independent guy who's using your tool? The open source version, not paying you guys, but web developer. They're putting a lot of effort, even if it's 4 or 5 or 6 weeks into the development. And do you think that it's sustainable, that they can make a living off of this, or build companies around their applications when they're selling these things for 99 cents or $1.99 a buy? Is this a good business model for them? And how do you guys contribute to their health?
Right. So it's interesting. I actually have a personal experience before coming to Appcelerator. I built my own app. I put it in the App Store, and I sold it for $1.99. And I know.
And you didn't retire.
And I did. I did not retire. I came over to Appcelerator, and and I'm in the mobile app space, and I'm continuing that. But I know the challenges from being there in the trenches, and I think that selling your application, 99 cents or $1.99 that's one of many different business models that you can employ. And I think that you really have to take a really hard look, and honest look about your application and the experience it provides and the uniqueness it offers versus a very competitive offering. And if you think that you can really compete in that space for that, then go for it. But just know it's extremely competitive. There are other options as well, right? You have
other revenue generating
other revenue generating options, right? We have full support for like iAd. We're adding AdMob here in another couple of weeks, and so you can do, obviously you can do advertising. Advertising as an alternate business model is based on engagement. Typically, it's 2 factors: length of engagement in an application, right? So like GetGlue it has long usage, because you're checking into a bunch of different services, you're interacting with your friends. Social typically drives longer engagement cycles, right, than, say, more utility types of applications where I'm in, I'm out, and I'm on my day. But the thing like utility applications have is they have more frequent use. I may access Shazam, right, several times and keep it on my phone. Not that I'm using it for long periods of time, but when I do need it, I'm in, I'm out, and I'm going. That's your ad revenue play, is either long engagement times or frequent use. And when you've got that model, then that advertising may benefit you. But those are only two models, right? There are a lot of other ones you can do. Certainly, we have a lot of developers that are just building applications for other clients. They make a living. Think of it as like, they're building websites for other clients. Now they're building mobile applications for other clients. That's certainly a very legitimate model. That's more the professional services business model. So that's one piece. Another piece, we've got some bookmakers that are doing in-application purchases. They give away the book itself. They sell the chapters as episodic content. So they've got a subscription type of model. So that's another business model. Then you get into more sophisticated business models. We can talk more about that. But there are lots of different business models, and I think it's really and the other big one, we get this one a lot as well. This is like Sugar CRM. We announced that they're doing mobile application. That's an extension of a web-based app, and so in that case, they've already got a model where they're charging for their existing service, and this extends that functionality. So that's another one. So I think we've got probably at least 5 business models there, depending on who you are and the type of experience and app that you're building.
It is interesting, but one of the things that is that an independent developer who's building something unique, is that sustainable as a business model? And you're right. If you're building a commodity product, right? Likelihood is that it's not sustainable. You got to come up with something a little bit more unique.
Yeah.
And I always, my thinking around a lot of the App Store stuff, especially on the consumer side, is that there's a mountain of apps that we've seen. So Apple puts it out, and Android puts it out, or Google. There's 250,000 in each store, and little RIM maybe he's got 10,000 or 20,000 apps, but still, when you've got that kind of overflow of applications, you've got to realize that that's just about a tiny percentage of the applications available for mobile devices, because a lot of it's being done behind the cover of enterprise, large companies that are building these tools.
Yep.
But I always think that if I don't believe, and this is a weird statement. I bought thousands of dollars of applications for my iPad, iPhone, anything I can find, BlackBerry, and there are some applications there that I would spend $50 on.
Right. Yep.
Not $1.99. In fact, I'm insulted that I would pay $1.99 because I use them. They're of such great utility to me.
Yeah.
That I, maybe not, Get Glue or Miso or Foursquare, yep, Gowalla, because I think the value there is in the data they're receiving. They should be paying me, right?
That's right.
But it's some of these applications that I use daily. I think that I should be paying more for, and I want to be able to sustain the developer who's building those applications. So, at some points, when you have to think about other ways to make money off of the application, you're either built the wrong app,
right,
or there's something maybe fundamentally wrong with the business model of an app store or an app world or something where price dictates the number of the activity, but you can't make a living off 99 cents. Long ramble, but is App Store broken?
Is the App Store broken? So I would say certainly the challenge of app discovery is huge, right? I mean, so fundamentally, that's what this issue gets down to, is basically one of app discovery, because there's something to be said that if you build a high quality application, the worst thing that could happen is that high quality application doesn't get the amount of attention that it deserves, not for the value of the application intrinsically, but just for the sheer fact that there are too many applications, and that you don't have the muscle to get in there. So I think the if there's anything broken or if there's anything that's not working well, it's that piece. It's that discoverability piece that of applications that should be selling more that aren't. And I think we can all look at the top 100 list and go, oh my God, what is that doing in the top?
Doodle jump.
And yeah, there are lots of crazy app. I mean, how does the app that just acts as a flashlight? How does the flashlight app make it up? Oh my God! Well, the guy was the first one there to make use of the iOS 4 flashlight piece. Yeah. Something had to work in that space, and he did. But that one trumps, say something that may be like a really intricate interactive type of game that applies to a minute audience or something like that.
Yeah.
So I think that's the piece that is probably quote unquote broken.
But that if that is broken, I mean that's the the fundamental flaw of and certainly Scott, I don't want to have taken over this whole discussion about the fundamental flaw, but if people can't find a great app, then I say that system itself is broken. Because if you can't find it, I talk to a bunch of people. How do you find your apps? Right? Same way everybody else does. Top 100. If you're not in the top 100, you're in the abyss.
Right.
I interviewed another great bunch of guys from California. Inedible Software. They built the shotgun app that everybody uses as an analogy for. I mean, it's remember the old days? Well, App Store has fart apps and shotgun apps. Well, the shotgun app has been very successful. But they did a great study on App Store saying that out of the 39 or 40,000 developers that have displayed apps in the store, the top 141 of them generate 90 to 93% of all activity around comments and ratings. Right. So you kind of 141 out of the 39,000 or 40,000 developers garner most of the activity. So the abyss that you fall off if you're 142nd on that list is an incredible fall. But you guys with Appcelerator or with Titanium are enabling more applications to be built. Do you think that that's good for creativity? Do you think that now all of a sudden those web guys who are building NBC.com, who are building the interaction with the customers, who understand engagement, will build these great applications that all of a sudden will hopefully clean out the garbage and really offer some great value in apps?
Yeah. So I mean, I have a lot of thoughts on that. I think that fundamentally here, again, it's that the App Store was the initial business model that came out, and it was the no-brainer business model, right? But I don't think the App Store and selling discrete apps is the be-all, end-all. And in fact, look at like NG Mocha now, right? Here's a business that's gone from selling apps to giving their apps away and then selling based on usage.
Yeah.
Right? So what they're saying is, let's solve the problem of discoverability by giving away that application. And then because the product is so dang good, Lemonade or any of their games, right, that they've done, we'll charge, you can play for a certain amount of time, and then after that period of time, you can play more that day. That's great. You're going to have to pay for it. Or you can wait until the next day, and then we'll give you a little bit more time. That sells on value and gets that reach problem addressed. So I really think you got to sort of break apart this monolithic 99-cent app. How can I make it in that world? And you got to break that down and say, how can I work the unique characteristics of the way the App Store is set up and the other off-deck monetization options to maximize my opportunity, right? Yeah. And that's going to be different. I've already run through 5 business models. I could give you 4 more that we're working on that add value on top of Titanium, but basically you've got like 10 to choose from.
Yeah.
You just have to pick, is my service for the 99-cent app, is my do I have that better mousetrap? Because it really better be a better mousetrap. If I don't, there are 9 other options for me to monetize. All of them can be successful, and I just have to figure out where I kind of line up best.
I don't think I could summarize the revolution that is mobile better, like the opportunity in mobile, than what you've just done, Scott. Because I look at this and I think, let's go back to the olden days, before the web, before mobile, and traditional software developers who would, gold master CD distribution, buy it on the shelves, $60. You had one way to monetize, sometimes 2 or 3 years worth of development effort, right? Remember, EA came out with that game Spore, right? That was 3 years in development. It was the be all and end all of game, and it didn't have a path, but it took 3 years to build, and by the time it came out, it was irrelevant. It didn't do as well as it should have. But all the technology, all the effort was put into a gold master and was distributed. One business model, one single way to make revenue.
Right.
You could OEM it. That was maybe another one, but it was still you're selling physical licenses and you're distributing it that way. Flash forward a very short period of time. The web opened up subscriptions. The web opened up, a number of services and a number of business models, but it certainly opened up everybody's eyes. Everybody became creative. You had Webvan and Pets.com and a bunch of all these other great, innovative advances in making money online.
Right.
But now flash forward kind of 10 years from that point into the mobile space. In a very short period of time, you've just detailed there's 10 ways to make money. And maybe our thinking is wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not about charging. Obviously, it's not. It's not about charging 99 cents. It's not about the old-fashioned way of making money off of software. It's about embracing new ways to generate revenue as a result of the effort that went into that software, and not because of the software, but as a result of it.
That's
so,
right.
In that sense, it isn't. Our thinking is flawed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe mine is. I don't think yours is. I think you're right on.
I mean, we talk to a lot of developers, right? Yeah. Every day we're just talking to just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of developers, and so we see these. What happens is that we see these patterns, and everyone's kind of facing like the same issues. Everyone comes in thinking, "I got a unique problem in a unique app," and we're like, "Really? No, you don't." You can kind of fit into like one of these different categories, and so I think that. Part of this, one of the things we're starting to get into now is we're starting to talk through like these different levels of engagement with applications, because we're really seeing this spectrum sort of open up. So let me kind of walk you through a couple of these levels of engagement, because I think it's important in terms of the monetization models that line up to those levels of engagement. So on the first hand, you've got like the information app, it's the brochureware from 1996, right? And there are a lot of those, right, that just aren't offering a lot of value. Yep. Second to that is participatory applications. These are applications in the Foursquare arena, like the Get Glue, like these others. I'm participating by sharing my location, by sharing what I'm doing, by sharing all these things. These are called participatory. Yep. Number three, and this is one we haven't even talked about on this call yet, but I think is the next wave. And I call it operations. It's actually where mobile actually fits into the actual operational problems that a business faces. Let's take a category like retail, right? Here's a category, right? Retail is getting hammered, right? It's getting hammered day in and day out. You can't drive enough people into your stores. The margins are terrible. Right, and loyalty is always an issue, right? And so, and yet, retail represents a huge swath of the economy, right? Those are operational problems that right now they're facing, right? Now, let me give you one example of one company fixing that problem, right? You check out, yesterday, right? You've got Groupon. Everybody's heard of Groupon. So Groupon ran a campaign yesterday with the Gap, their first nationwide campaign, right? Here's the deal, right? You buy $50 of Gap stuff. You have to, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. $50 in T-shirts, whatever it is. We'll give you half off. So you get that half off deal. And then Groupon goes off and says, okay, we're going to do this nationwide to all the Groupon stores, right? Yesterday, in one day, they were on track. Last time I was reading TechCrunch, they were on track for doing like 500 to 700,000 uses of that coupon, right? 500 to 700,000. I'm like, that's a huge number for Gap to add in. And by the way, it's not a coincidence that Gap's doing it now, right? They're doing it because it's back to school. Yeah. So back to school is a mainline business operation that Gap does every year, and it's extremely competitive. But every year the prize is huge because every parent has to spend $600 on a kid to get them clothed and equipped. So mobile, so Groupon uses mobile, deals out, basically it's like, and then the cost, of doing that is basically $25. So it's a $25 acquisition to get someone through the door. That's an operational problem that Groupon is solving. Yeah. By the way, Groupon is making millions and millions of dollars in one day from that transaction, which we get back to business models, seems like a pretty good way to make a living, right? So I think that it's sort of this, progression of engagement. Information, brochureware applications, really not that interesting, but on the other hand, do it in a mobile web page, in some cases, if it's got more interactive, do it in an app. Monetize in some ways, if it's really got a lot of interactivity, monetize it through app sales. That's cool. Number two, participatory, right? I'm checking on the location. I'm checking in with my friends. Longer engagement, right? Longer engagement. Advertising may work for you, right? In some cases, app sales, and in some cases, subscription models, right? Subscribing to those types of services. Number three, we get into operational problems. Operational problems mean typically I need more people, in this case, like coming to my stores. I need to be able to monetize them, maybe like mobile commerce or something like that through, more sophisticated checkout type things like Shopkick is doing. Good example there. And then I need to drive loyalty. And mobile's a great utility or a great platform for driving loyalty, right? And that whole, all those punch cards that we have in our wallet today will get replaced by a single application that can track that loyalty. And so again, those are 3, 4, 5 more business models, and those are other ways to solve operational problems. But I think the entire scope there can be explained by engagement, and that's what mobile really brings is contextual engagement to applications.
Scott, it's a phenomenal summary of how people are using this technology, and it's the innovative guys that are looking at this holistically to bring that out. With participatory activities like Foursquare, Gowalla, or even now Facebook, you really have you have massive opportunity to interact with your with the people that are using these tools. But really, it is guys like Groupon. I interviewed Greg Grunberg, who is doing Yowza as well. So but it's not group coupons. It's just coupons or mobile coupons. This is just at the beginning of implementing this technology. It's pretty amazing to be a part of, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, and a lot of these are just it's not like these problems haven't existed. It's just we do have a better way of tackling some of these, and and again it's just another example of kind of moving away from that 99-cent app store dynamic and breaking that apart and really just kind of figuring this whole thing out. And it is fun, and it's also kind of fun to also think about what's always happening is you got 7 of these platforms out there and they're all duking it out, and they've and so you've got all this change that look at what happened over just the last 6-9 months, right? And we track that on a regular basis to just kind of see how that affects things. So you've got that changing dynamic, and then you've got the changing business models, but the changing business models are typically adding business models, not dropping them off,
right.
But they're making some business models more efficient than others. So, I think for people out there, people in your audience, the important thing is, to really just, you got to roll up your sleeves and dive in on a lot of this stuff and understand the trends that are happening with the platforms. You've got to understand the trends that are happening with the business models. Then you have to understand, like in our case, right, you have to understand the ways that you can tackle those problems to sort of maximize that upside and minimize your downside exposure, right? Because there's a lot of downside exposure in this space. So you got to kind of do that as well.
So let's finish with that side. Is that the downside exposure, it goes beyond just investing in effort and time and money into application development. Have you seen anything that really exemplifies the downside exposure or the impact of something going wrong?
Sure, right. So I think that, absolutely. You can, I think a lot of this kind of gets into more of like relationships that you have in your business, right? So I think that, as you think through your mobile strategy, what it will typically do is it'll push you into places maybe that you're not quite comfortable or haven't been as comfortable in the past, right? You're going to bring on new partners, you're going to bring on new business associates that are going to aid you in bringing your product to market. Mm-hmm. And I think what you really want to do is like really understand basically the amount of value they're adding and the amount of exposure that you have in terms of maybe more cost and so forth. And I think that But it's more of a softer people type of thing to basically manage your overall cost and time structure. Yep. Am I able, because at the end of the day, that's your downside risk, right? It's going to be measured in time or cost. Yep. At the end, everything on the bottom line is time and cost, right? And ultimately, they equate to each other. So I think that anything that shortens your cycle is a good thing. Rapid innovation is the name of the game, because only through rapid innovation are you able to keep up with the opportunity while making sure that you've got your bases covered in terms of if something goes wrong, I can change it, right? So rapid innovation is key. So shortening that time, and then of course driving down that cost structure in terms of those individual investments, making sure that that's all reduced. So so it's working with great people in your organization that are able to help you get to market faster and to do things more cost effectively, and of course having the right investments to lower that overall exposure, so you're able to keep in those really rapid innovation cycles.
See, and that's and a lot of that is helped by adopting titanium, as the development platform, isn't it?
Well, we would certainly like to think that as part of your mobile and desktop application development strategy, that you'd look at someone like you look at a technology like ours, and you'd say, you know what, there's a great way to get me into market faster without having any of the downsides of we're not a write once, deploy everywhere. We are a write once, reuse, and maximize the capabilities of each of those unique devices for those native apps. Yeah.
Wow, geez, Scott, I feel like I've extracted so much. I've been tapped into Scott's brain for about an hour now, and so many more questions, but I really I don't want to dilute the content that we've got so far. I want everybody to embrace what we've talked about and the lessons that you've imparted here. So I'm going to actually do something that I don't often do, which is I think we've got way too much already. So we've got a main line into Scott's brain. Where can people? I know you guys do surveys out to your developers, so you get some great information, and that's up on the Appcelerator blog, right, where they can find that information.
That's right. So we have a couple of news sources. So ways you can stay up with us. Of course, you can go to appcelerator.com. You can download the SDK. We've got a bunch of getting started stuff. A lot of sample codes. Everyone loves sample codes and walkthrough guides. We got a lot of that. So get in there.
Even video tutorials you guys offer up there as well.
Yeah. So we do a lot of video tutorials to ramp you up, and then over on the developer.appcelerator.com, that's the hangout area. Everyone hangs out there, asks their questions on our forums. We have the great thing is our co-founders are super technical, and they're always out there blogging. We have our employees blogging, and we mix it up a lot. We love mixing it up a lot on our blog. And we maintain our Twitter feed really active as well. On the front-facing side, we do we do these regular surveys, in part to keep us up to speed. As I mentioned before, it's really important to us to stay up on those trends, right? Understand what WebOS means in terms of tablet deployments. Understand where RIM sits in terms of how we sort of prioritize resource, understand the Apple Google fight. Those dynamics I think are really important for us to understand, and so we share that with our developers. That's why we do those surveys. So that's kind of how Appcelerator works. Though we work in all of that day in and day out. We just keep building this with our developers who help us squash bugs, find new features, and build the next layer of value on top of Titanium. So.
All right, so appcelerator.com. Go there, take a look. There's you can dive deep into the resources. There's a bunch of great examples. You have a good showcase for the apps that have been developed. I haven't yet made myself a New Jersey or a Jersey Shore avatar yet or anything, but I do believe that. That I'd like to have you back at some point again, because we can really talk about the guts, a little bit more technical around what Appcelerator is. But I feel literally, ton of value that's come out of this session. And if anybody has any comments, suggestions, criticisms about what we've talked about here, leave them below wherever you are watching this. There's got to be somewhere where you can actually leave a comment or something like that. If it's at untether.tv or if it's at Appcelerator, just leave it, and somebody will leave your comment. Somebody will respond to it absolutely positively. You have my guarantee, and I'm pretty sure Scott will participate as well.
We'll be jumping on in.
Yeah. So Scott, listen, thank you so much for coming on and talking about this and sharing the knowledge that's in Appcelerator. It just kind of adds that layer to you guys as a knowledge-based company, as well as the technology that you're producing. So I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you there, Rob. And it's great to talk with a fellow mobile insider specialist here. So we really appreciate it here, Rob, and happy to come back anytime.
Well, that's great. Well, we've been speaking with Scott Schwarzhoff, who's the VP Marketing at Appcelerator, and this is another session of Untether.tv done, and hopefully you found some value. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
See ya.
Ciao.